Well, I was also fortunate that I read politics in university.
The wrong university. You went to Oxford, but never mind.
And secondly, uh, and more importantly than that, we saw the institutions being destroyed, the political institutions gradually being destroyed, and from a democracy, the country moving towards a kleptocracy. And we found that people came into politics to make money. And you can only make money in politics if you destroy the institutions. So therefore, being fortunate enough to having watched a functioning democracy in England, and remember it was the Westminster model which we adapted in Pakistan, having watched it function in England and then seeing what was going wrong in Pakistan, that was the main reason that I thought that people like us who did not need politics to make money or to, as a career, who came into politics because we thought the system had gone on the wrong direction and to come and change the direction.
But were you ever tempted to just have the good life in England, just stay there?
I never ever thought that I would live anywhere but Pakistan because I was always deeply rooted in Pakistan. I took a lot of pride. A lot of my generation which grew up in Pakistan, you know, as I said, we were the first generation. Our parents took such pride in Pakistan being an independent country. So at no point did I ever think of not living in Pakistan. And so it was never an issue.
I mean, just before you came here, Wasim Akram was here. And, great bowler. And he refers to you still as skipper. Now, what makes a good skipper?
Well, cricket is the...
And you obviously were a great skipper because, you won the World Cup.
Well, others also have won the World Cup, but not necessarily they are good captains. But let me just say one thing. Cricket is the only sport that needs leadership. No other sport needs leadership. You watch other sports, the coach is far more important than the captain. But cricket is that one game where it unfolds like a game of chess. You can have all the strategies in the dressing room, but when you go out, the decisions have to be made ball to ball. And hence, no coach can have that impact as a captain can. So in a way, cricket captaincy is very challenging. It is where you can actually lift a weak team and actually make it do great things. A captain can make a lot of difference. So in that sense, if there is a captain, if a sport benefits from a captain, it's cricket.
Well, if you think of the present Pakistan captain, Misbah al-Haq, I mean, he's retiring, and he's, 43? It's extraordinarily old for a cricket player at that level. Why was he retiring now? Why did he come into cricket so late at this level?
A talent like Misbah al-Haq, he came into cricket so late because we have probably one of the worst domestic cricket. And it just reflects that a man who could have been, one of our all-time greats, who could have broken all records, and he did not come into cricket till he was 34 into Test cricket. In Australia, a batsman is thinking of retiring at 34 when he came in. So it just reflects that we have a very poor cricket structure in this country. It misses out on polishing the really good talent.
And is that a sort of a parallel with Pakistani politics? Sorry? I mean, if you have a poor cricket structure, do you also have actually a poor political structure?
Well, it's because of the poor political structure that we've got a poor cricketing structure. We have someone who's heading our cricket. His main qualification is that he fixed the elections for the Prime Minister. Election fixer has been brought in to stop the match fixers. So he has experience in that field, how to fix things.
How are you going to change it?
Sorry?
How are you going to change it?
Well, in a nutshell, the way to resolve Pakistan's problem, all the problems, is exactly is to do the opposite of why we have all the problems in Pakistan. So therefore, the reasons why we are in a mess is because we have destroyed our institutions, the state institutions, and how we will fix them is to fix the state institutions. So I'll just give you one example. In Pakhtunkhwa, which is the province where my party is in government, the police is the most difficult thing to fix in Pakistan. Today, the police in KP is by far the best police in Pakistan. Reason is, we made it into an institution. We got one of the best persons to head the police force. We stopped all political interference. There's no political interference in the police in Pakhtunkhwa. All the selections are on merit. There's an NTS system which we adopted rather than nepotism and favoritism, or actually people took money to have policemen inducted. So we fixed that system, and then the internal accountability of the police, which has led to a really a police force that has brought down crime. It has brought down terrorism in a province where, when we took over, the highest number of terrorist attacks were in KP. So it can be fixed by bringing in merit, by the police is no longer following dictates of some ruling party. They follow the law. And it's exactly how you fix all the institutions like cricket. Cricket should be an institution in Pakistan. It should not, the Prime Minister should not be appointing the head of the cricket board. The cricket board should be an institution. They should have elections, like happens everywhere else.
But when you talk of institutions, I mean, one of the institutions is the military, the army. And if you look at Pakistan from south of the border, from India, I mean, as an outsider, people say, well, India is a great democracy, blah, blah, blah. They look at Pakistan, they say, well, Pakistan could be a great democracy, but it oscillates between military rule and democratic rule. So what's gone wrong with these institutions?
Well, we went off to a bad start because Pakistan was a security state. The fear of security always hounded Pakistan when it first came into being. So the military got much stronger because we relied on it. As time went on, whenever the democratic system failed, we never allowed that democratic system to self-correct. Instead, we had these interventions which retarded the whole democratic process. Fortunately now, and thanks to electronic media, we have one of the most vibrant medias anywhere in the world. And thanks especially to social media now, which is a huge force that people still are not understanding the impact of social media. So the level of awareness is such that I do not think that we will ever have military takeover in Pakistan in our history again. But what has happened is that we are now moving mentally towards a more democratic system. Yeah. People are aware of their rights. You know, the media just doesn't spare anyone. And if the mainstream media misses anyone, the social media does not miss them.
Yeah, true enough. Going back to cricket just for, sorry, this microphone I think is that better? Going back to cricket for a moment. And I mentioned a few great all-rounders. Let's just talk about batsmen. In your experience, who was the best batsman you played against?
Well, the easiest question to answer. His name was Viv Richards. He was by far, I mean, he was a genius. Yeah. There were some great batsmen during my time, but no one came close to Viv Richards because he had these exceptional God-gifted qualities. He had the greatest talent.
And he never wore a helmet.
He had this, his reflexes. He had the best reflexes of any batsman I'd bowled to. He was courageous, brave, you know, all these qualities in one player. I think if he had played any sport, he would have excelled. You know, he had all the, you know, he had the courage, he had the temperament, he loved the big matches. he would lose interest when there was no challenge. So another quality, he took on challenges, and there just no one came close to him.
And the best bowler?
The best
fast bowler apart from you.
The best fast bowler, I thought, you know, he only, for 5 years, he bowled at his fastest, was Michael Holding.
Yeah. Looked beautiful when he bowled, really fantastic. Spin bowler?
Spin bowler in my time, I thought he was not very successful, but I thought he was the most talented spin bowler, was Abdul Qadir.
Yeah.
Now, problem was that if Abdul Qadir played today, I have no doubt that he would have got as many wickets as Shane Warne.
Yeah.
But the system, the umpiring was such, you didn't have this DRS system now. They never gave wickets to him on the front foot, like Shane Warne used to get wickets on the front foot. Abdul Qadir never got those wickets. So I reckon if he was playing now, he would be as good, if not better than Shane Warne. Viv Richards and Rana Tunga of Sri Lanka, I remember I was sitting with them once on television. Both of them rated him higher even than Shane Warne.
Really? Wow. And the best current players?
I'm not, you know, that current right now because, as you know, I'm in a different ball game. My concentration is on the Panama pitch.
Well,
and let me tell you, everyone else is also watching the Panama score.
I was about to bowl you that particular googly. What do you think should happen over the Panama Papers, Panama Gate, the Nawaz thing? That's an easy question to answer.
That's even easier than saying who was the best batsman, I thought. You know. Panama, what should happen is that what should happen first time in our history is that a powerful person in Pakistan should be convicted of corruption and money laundering. That should happen. It's never happened. Unfortunately, in the past, our judicial system has always sided with the powerful people. And this is the first time, I don't want to say because, you know, they're about to announce their verdict, hopefully this week, coming week. But I think, you know, it is a defining moment in the history of Pakistan. It's a defining moment because this verdict will change the way the ruling...
The ruling elite may say that, you know, this is really the power of the demonstration, the power of the street. I mean, you famously organized demonstrations outside Parliament. So in a way, aren't you sort of going outside the institutions?
Look, in a democratic society, when you do not get justice, it is the right of a citizen to have a peaceful demonstration. We have always had peaceful demonstrations. There are 2 times we have taken to the streets. First time was when we demanded in the 2013 election that just open 4 constituencies out of 413 constituencies which were controversial or where people thought the election had been rigged. We just said open 4 sample constituencies just so that we find out what happened in the election and that it is not repeated again in the next election. That's all. So we were not allowed to open those 4 constituencies. We took to the streets. And bear in mind, 22 political parties said the election was rigged. Not just us. In fact, the entire political spectrum said the election was rigged. So all we wanted was an investigation. And when it didn't happen, it took us a year, tried everything. Then we took to the streets. Second time was Panama. We went to the National Assembly. The entire opposition in the National Assembly wanted an investigation into Panama. When we realized that the ruling party was not going to allow that investigation, then my party took to the streets wanting to open an investigation into it. And eventually we ended up in the Supreme Court. So we have stayed within the Constitution. We have stood up for what is our democratic right to get justice. And never have we gone out of the Constitution or the limits of the Constitution.
You know, one of the previous speakers today, Senator, I can't remember his name now. But anyway, his point was that corruption is part of our political DNA. Yeah,
Mushahid
exactly.
Hussain?
Yes.
I'm just trying to place him now. Go on, tell me.
It's quite difficult to change your DNA. How are you going to do it?
This is just absolute nonsense. Throughout history, we have seen societies change the course of direction where they've headed. We have also seen societies that don't change. We've seen them destroyed. This is throughout human history. So all the time, human beings, human societies are presented a situation where you reach a point where you say, if you want to survive, you have to change. The whole theory behind survival of the species is not the most fittest to survive. It's the most adaptable who survive. Pakistan has reached the point. If we do not change the way we run this country, we are heading towards not one, but many crises, but main crises. We are bankrupt. We don't have enough money to run the country, to educate our children, to have proper hospitals, to have clean drinking water, to provide for the huge unemployed youth in this country. And unless and until we change the way we govern, strengthen the institutions, and have strong institutions which fight corruption. Corruption is, I remember in Singapore when we were in the 60s, Singapore wasn't a clean society. It was much more corrupt than Pakistan. Pakistan was not a corrupt society in the 60s. I remember there was one boy in our class, and the whole class suspected that his father was corrupt. And poor guy, for 8 years, everyone called his father corrupt in the class. So gradually, corruption became acceptable. It wasn't in our DNA. We accepted corruption because the ruling elite, when your ruling elite gets corrupt, they corrupt the whole system. Fish rots from the top. And we have in human history examples of who is a prophet, peace be upon him. When he started the first Muslim society in Medina, through his personal example, he lifted the whole moral standards of the whole society. The same people changed. In English society, we know of, I read about Victorian England, one man, Prince Albert, the husband of Queen Victoria, through his moral standards, he lifted the whole century was called a century of Victorian values. So the Englishmen who came here, Robert Clive and the East India Company types, were corrupt, were known to be corrupt. But gradually after Prince Albert's time, the whole morality of the society changed. So if you have a crook running the country, he destroys the whole system. And if you have someone who's clean, and we've seen Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, we've seen Mahathir in Malaysia, and they've changed the society. So I disagree about this DNA bit.
Mind you, Malaysia has gone back a bit since Mahathir's time.
But you see,
which in a way proves your point. It does depend upon an individual.
And then if that individual then brings in strong institutions. If you have powerful institutions, for instance, like in Switzerland. I mean, in Switzerland, we don't even know who the prime minister is. I've never known who's the prime minister of Switzerland because the institutions are so strong, the individual just becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. Captaincy, going back, you were first a captain at Oxford.
That's
when
right.
you were how old?
My second year at Oxford, I was the captain, 21.
21. And was it fun? Or was it difficult? I mean, how challenging is it?
I think the problem with leadership, any leadership, when you take it on, if you take the leadership on because you want to achieve certain results, it's a different approach to it when you take a position for the sake of the position. So I saw in my cricketing years captains whose loyalty was to their captaincy, not to having the captaincy to win, It's two different things. If I'm loyal, if all I'm interested in is retaining my captaincy, I will captain the team differently to someone who takes on captaincy and says, okay, I'll try and give these results. If I fail, I'll leave it. There are two different approaches. So you should not be, the only way you enjoy captaincy is if you are not scared to leave it. If you think you can't do it, and which is what I always thought, if I didn't succeed, I'll leave it. And I'm the only captain when I became captain for Pakistan. And by the way, I never wanted to be the captain. There was a players' revolt against the captain, and the two factions, the only reason I became the captain is that they would not agree on anyone except me. So that's how I became the captain. And I'm the only captain who resigned twice. There were 2 times when they would not give me the team I wanted, I resigned. But it's never in our history has any captain ever resigned. And of course, I left captaincy, I wasn't kicked out. And I think Misbah is going to be the only other captain who leaves captaincy without being kicked out. Which is very commendable.
You're now the captain of a political party. Is it different?
Look, in my opinion, you know, life is a stepping stone. Every experience you have prepares you for another experience. The time when we stop growing is when we stop challenging ourselves. So in my opinion, school prepares you for university and university prepares you for work. Similarly, cricket prepared me for building this cancer hospital. If I had not had the ups and downs, the struggles, you know, the bad times, learning from experiences, and, you know, the handling defeat. Yeah. It's never handling the bad times, you can never be successful because you get scared of failure. If you're scared of failure, you can't win. So my 21 years struggle in cricket prepared me for building this hospital, which was much more difficult than playing cricket. And then the cricket and the hospital combined prepared me for politics. I would never have lasted 21 years in politics had I not gone through that struggle of those two experiences I had.
And did you have to think hard before, when you were a captain, before the match, when you were, I mean, building the hospital is an extraordinary achievement. Did you think very hard before taking on that challenge?
You see, I'll tell you.
Or was it sort of almost an impetuous, I'm going to do it?
I have always followed my heart. You know, I have this passion for something. I was 9 years old when I wanted to become a test cricketer. I still remember my mother took me to this match in Lahore, and my first cousin, her oldest sister's son, he scored a century in Gaddafi Stadium. And I remember watching that, and I said, that's what I wanted to be. But I did not realize how difficult it would be. You know, I thought, yes, I want to be a cricketer, and I never, from the age of 9, I never doubted that I would not succeed in becoming a test cricketer. I didn't know what I had to go through. It was a huge struggle to reach the top 11 in your team, but I never, ever thought I would not succeed. Now, it's very important for people sitting here, especially the younger people. There is an expression called burning your boats. It's a very important expression because if you want to do anything and your passion, your heart tells you you want to do it, you have to go for that by burning your boats. There's no turning back. Because once you have that attitude, it means that the enormous potential a human being has, the Almighty has given all of us this enormous potential. We only discover it when we challenge ourselves. And when we are up against resistance and we do not give up, that's when this potential comes up. That's how people become big achievers. It's when they single-mindedly, with a tunnel vision, decide to go after something. I have always discovered that passion means what you want something from the heart, will always overtake talent. Intelligence, talent will be left behind by someone who has passion. So I had passion in cricket at the age of 9. I decided that's what I want to do. And then I always, when I reached a certain milestone, I always upped the ambition. So from playing cricket for Pakistan, I wanted to become the best all-rounder in Pakistan. When I became the best all-rounder, I then wanted to be the best all-rounder in the world. Then when I became the captain, I wanted Pakistan team to be the best in the world. So it was always moving, pushing yourself, challenging yourself more. And so I always had that attitude in life. And I never, once I decided something, and building that hospital, I never realized how difficult it would be. Had I known, I'll just give you an example. Had I known what it would entail to build a cancer hospital and then to run it, the building was one thing. Running a cancer hospital, just to give you an idea, that it cost us 700 million rupees to build the hospital. Wow. The yearly expense, now the yearly deficit is 4 billion rupees. So imagine if I had thought, and collecting those 700 million rupees, I mean, it was for me like climbing Mount Everest. It was the most difficult thing I did. And had I known at that time that the deficit would be 4 billion rupees, because the idea was to treat 70% of the patients free, cancer patients free, I didn't realize that. So when I went into it, I did not know the details. But it's not a bad thing, because sometimes if you knew all the details, you might not undertake that mission.
So the next ambition is to be Prime Minister.
The next
passion and no doubt.
There's my opponents keep saying whenever I criticize them or I challenge their corruption or I challenge their rigging in the elections, they always say, oh, Imran wants to be the Prime Minister. And I keep asking myself, what does Nawaz Sharif want to do when winning the elections? Does he want to be a Thanedar or what? He wants to be a Patwari? I mean, you win an election to become the Prime Minister. But there is a difference. You know, I again go back to cricket. There is a captain, the best captains I always thought were the ones who took on captaincy. And the one I looked up to was this Australian captain, Ian Chappell. Yeah. I thought he was one captain who led from the front. But he, if anything got in the way of him making Australia the #1 team, he was prepared to leave captaincy. Similarly, if you want to become, there have been so many prime ministers of Pakistan, people don't even remember their names. Or they don't want to remember their names. But if you want to be a prime minister, it must be for a reason. So I would want to be a prime minister for two reasons. One, that Pakistan has strong institutions. So an institution, like our Accountability Bureau, it must become an institution which goes according to the law. Similarly, the police, the health system, the education system, and cricket, for instance, they all must become institutions. So have strong institutions in Pakistan. And number two, all resources must go into human development. The most important field where the resources should go is education. Yeah. Because no society, no matter how talented, without education, they can never progress, they can never achieve their potential. So my one is strong institutions. Number two, strong institutions. Why? Because I believe if we can cut down corruption, especially the big corruption, I reckon, and we fix the FBR, which is the tax collecting agency, I believe this country has huge potential to collect enough money then to spend on a human resource. So the second thing is to reduce poverty. Because in my opinion, the example of China, where China has done something which no human society has ever done. In the last 30 years, they have brought something like 500 million people out of poverty. Now that is, what has propelled China into what it is now. I was studying that their GDP in 1980 was $300 billion. It's $10 trillion now. Yeah. And it's because they brought these people out of poverty. That meant that people had buying power. I mean, apart from the moral issue where you have so many poor people, it's also economically, it makes sense. If you bring people out of poverty, you have bigger markets, you can spend, people want to, you invite investors because there's such a huge market like in China. And so the whole society prospers. So, you know, they are the two models. One is human development and reducing poverty. One is strengthening institutions.
But China is one of your neighboring countries. Afghanistan, of course, is another. And you go back to George W. Bush's global war on terror, etc. The repercussions for Pakistan have been immense. I mean, what's your view of the last few years because of American foreign policy and Pakistan foreign policy?
You see, I think this saying that those who don't learn from their mistakes are condemned to repeat those mistakes. So we made a big mistake in the 80s. We entered into the US. Again, it was a war, then jihad against the Soviets. We had Kalashnikovs flooded in, we had drugs which were being used to finance the war, and militant groups. We never had the sectarian militant groups which were a result of the Afghan jihad. And then, fast forward to about another decade later, 9/11 happens, and we are hunting the same groups, the same jihadi groups then become terrorists. And so, any country which has immoral foreign policy like that, which does such injustice to its people, is bound to have consequences. So we paid a huge price for this foreign policy. I'm afraid we produce these jihadis for dollars, and then we kill the same jihadis as terrorists for dollars. And therefore, you know, the society has suffered enormous damage. I want to think that Pakistan should never, ever, ever, never be part of someone else's war. We should, as a society, we should decide that we should help in bringing people together for peace, but we should never enter into any alliance which is for war.
I mean, I listened to that applause here, and I assume that message has been heard. But do you think it has been heard at the political level, at the government level? I mean, I think back to the days of General Musharraf, when you had drone attacks in Pakistan, which actually were approved tacitly, but approved by the government.
Well, one of the most immoral policies of the government, lying to its own people, that they would actually condemn drone attacks.
Yeah.
And then we found out that they had actually given the green signals to the Americans to conduct drone attacks against its own people. I mean, such a policy, such an immoral policy. Those who push the buttons for these bombs to fall on villages, I mean, the immorality of that, the American foreign policy, the CIA-led drone policy. What it achieved, you can just tell right now, it's achieved nothing. What have they achieved? And secondly, you know, Pakistan government allowing that to happen. Because what was happening was that quite clearly when you're bombing villages, you're going to kill people, innocent women, children, and then the fallout, the backlash was against Pakistani troops and Pakistani people. So it was, as I said, one of the most immoral foreign policies allowed by a government to allow drone attacks on your own citizens.
So are you encouraged or discouraged by the presidency or the election of Donald J. Trump?
You know, when Trump got elected...
This is where you try to become a diplomat.
No, I'm not going to be. When Trump got elected, and then I saw his team, you know, the team he was selecting. So I thought to myself, he's not as bad as I thought he was. He's much worse.
Do you want to go on with that, or?
No, I think it's. I feel sad that one of the democracies which, as students of politics, when we were growing up, we would look at the American democracy, the writings of the American founding fathers, and some of them were incredible human beings. I mean, they were great people, great minds that formed the American Constitution. And then to see America where Donald Trump gets elected as a president, I'm afraid it's a decline of a civilization. John, I think, I can't comment on once I stop playing, because when you're playing, you can actually gauge the quality of a captain, because you know the contemporary test teams as well, and then you can, gauge when you're playing against them. So I can't really comment since I left cricket. But when I was playing, by far, Ian Chappell was the best captain. And I give you the reasons why, because...
Better than Benno, better than...
But I didn't see Benno play. So I'm not talking about people before or after. But one thing I will say, which was difficult for a batsman, I always thought that a batting captain was... I never saw a good batting captain. Why? Because I think that the whole, apart from inspiring your team and leading by example, the thing about captaincy is to handle the bowlers. Yeah. And I never thought there were hardly any batting captains who understood bowlers. So when I was a young player playing for county teams and playing for Pakistan, I never thought that the batting captains understood how to use bowlers. And the whole thing about captaincy is how you use your bowlers. When to change the bowler, when not to change him, what bowler to bring at what stage. And I thought in county cricket, the players, the captains who were good captains, were always all-rounders. Because all-rounder can look at the game from a batsman point of view and also from a bowler's point of view.
Now, questions from the audience.
My question is in regards to the elections for 2018. As you know, we need clean elections for the future of our country. So it's very, really important. Do you have any plans on how you can incorporate technology to make them more transparent? Any PTI plans for that?
Yes, we are planning to have a charter of demands before the next elections. In fact, very soon now, where we will, in the light of what the Judicial Commission on Rigging, the Supreme Court Judicial Commission on Rigging, they had 40 findings. And we will base these demands around those 40 findings, about, we don't know, 8 to 10 demands, what we need to have free and fair elections in Pakistan. So we will ensure that the next elections, before the elections, we will demand the sort of rules we want for fair elections, rather than once the elections are over, then there are no listeners.
Actually, in Pakistan, we are something like a nation of firefighters. We end up from one crisis to the other, and sometimes you get worried that is this designed affair to keep this nation embroiled in this kind of affair so that you don't think visionary? Where is the vision? Where are we heading for? I mean, if we were to think in, let's say, 2050, where will we be? We have, this is the hall of learned people. And if you ask where we are today and where will we be in 2050, what would be your answer?
The problem where you have people whose main concern is to win elections and then come into power, not for the sake of people, but for personal benefits. When you have those people, they do not think of the long-term future of the society and our generations, because they only think of the next elections. In fact, a lot of politicians all over the world only think of the next elections. One of the reasons why China has developed so fast and so quickly is because they have long-term planning. Reason why Singapore developed so rapidly, from $500 per capita to $50,000 per capita, because they had a statesman who had long-term planning, who thought of the future generations. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, if we had thought about our future generations, just taking one example, we would not have had thermal power plants. we would have hydroelectricity, which was the cheapest, cleanest energy, and we have what some say almost 50,000 to 80,000 megawatts of clean energy available. But because it was short-term planning, thinking of perhaps commissions from these IPPs, and so we are lumbered with this, the electricity situation, very expensive electricity, and when we have it. And as a result, our industry suffers, our exports are down. So it's just one aspect I'm saying, but the most important is education. How can a society not worry about educating its people? Even the third thing is environment. Now Pakistan is number 7 in the world, a country which is going to be most affected by global warming. What have we done about it? The only time, and I'm very proud of what the KP government has done, they have planted 800 million trees in 3 years. So this, anyone who's in power should be worried about this, because global warming will affect Pakistan more than other countries, because 80% of our water in our rivers is from the glaciers. And there are already 5,000 glacial lakes because of global warming. It's a serious situation. So just to sum it up, you are absolutely right. There has been no long-term planning. And that's it. We have to, from now on, as I said, Pakistan has to be run completely different to the way it's been run so far.
Before I take the next question, is there anybody in Pakistan politics outside the PTI that you actually admire?
Now, that's the most difficult question you've asked. Because if he was, please tell me, I would try and get him into PTI. And you know, obviously, for us Pakistanis, the man who we admire most was the founder of Pakistan, Jinnah. Yeah. And the reason why we admired him was because even his enemies knew Jinnah had, Quaid-e-Azam had complete integrity, intelligent and selfless. All 3 qualities which sadly were missing most of the time in our history. So by the end of your program, maybe I'll think of this politician who I'll get into PTI.
The gentleman
I have
there.
a question. My question is, how would you rate the performance of your party in KPK, as your party is in the power for the last 4 years, vis-a-vis the promises which were made in 2013 election?
I think KP government has done better than any government in Pakistan, any provincial government in Pakistan. If you look at the record of what it has done, it depends what you think is progress. If you look at the Nawaz Sharif model of progress, it's cutting ribbons about roads, and it's flyovers, and it's you know, all about transport. If you look at KP, it has the province that has done most for human development, the highest budget on education. It has built, strengthened institutions. It has brought the best local government system in Pakistan's history, where the power has been devolved right down to the village level. It's never been done before. And trying to strengthen the institutions. So, you know, if you are looking for high rises and infrastructure, no, we haven't had enough money. There's, you know, the total development budget of KP is 113 billion rupees. The orange train is over 200 billion rupees. So it does not have enough money. So either you use the money for building roads, or you use that money for investing into education and the future of our generations. So that's why, if you're looking at the second bit, I think KP has done very well, bearing in mind it is the first time PTI has been in power, whereas they've been in power 6 times each, the 2 other parties, in the last 30 years. 6 times each have been in power in the provinces.
We're coming very close to the end of our time. But
My name is Wasim Ashfaq. I'm practicing chartered accountant. I just want to know Imran's take on the statement given by Governor of Sindh yesterday before this ordinance, that whatever peace has been achieved in Karachi is just because of the present government and the leadership of the present Prime Minister. not because of the army and the leadership of the General Rahil. What's your take?
Well, I don't blame the Sindh governor because he's only got there because he's served the Sharif family very well. Anyone and stood outside the Supreme Court every day after the hearing and said that the Qatari letter was genuine. Anyone. I mean, if you walk out, even go to any shop, go to the Chabri wala, go to anyone, everyone knows the letter is fraud. But according to Zubair, the governor, that's why he's become the governor, he believed in the Qatari letter. So he's only, for getting there, becoming the governor for his services rendered to the Sharif family, protecting the corruption. It was expected that he would come up with a stupid statement like that. Because how can armed forces is part of Pakistan. Anyone who's the prime minister should be encouraging if the police does well. For instance, every day on all TV shows, I praise our police, we praise the IG police, who's the Nasir Durrani, who fixed our police system. We don't say that we corrected the police system in KP, and they have brought down crime and terrorism in KP. We give the credit to the police because they've laid down their lives. So why isn't he giving the credit to General Rahil has brought down terrorism in Pakistan, and people of Karachi are especially happy with him.
Imran, I'm going to end on a very simple cricketing question. Which form of the game is the best? Test, one day, T20, etc.
You see, if you ask that question to any cricketer will tell you that the real test of a cricketer is Test cricket. A cricketer will never rate a one-day cricketer. A cricketer will never rate a 2020 cricketer, but he will only rate a Test cricketer. Because Test is the total test of a player. So Test cricket, it tests your temperament, and temperament has two facets to it. One is intelligence, what is called sporting intelligence, and secondly, guts, courage. Secondly, it tests your technique, and then your talent. Third, 2020 cricket will barely test your technique. Basically, it tests your hitting power. So that's just one aspect. So Test is actually the total test of a player, Test cricket. And therefore, there is nothing, in my opinion, there is nothing that comes close to a great Test match.
Well, I very much agree with you. And on that note, and I really hope that Test cricket comes back to Pakistan very soon. I think a round of applause for Imran.
Thank you.
And then